For 31 years, Sharon Kessler told other people's children what to do. She did it from the front of a middle school in Edina, Minnesota, with laminated hallway pauses, clipped announcements, and the kind of eye contact that made 12-year-olds sit up straighter without being touched. Parents loved her. Teachers respected her. Kids feared her just enough to call it discipline and not enough to call it cruelty. Then she retired, and she brought the same energy home. If you had asked me in 2011 whether my mother was controlling, I would have laughed and said, no, she's just intense. If you had asked my husband Nathan the same question a week before our wedding, he probably would have rubbed the back of his neck, looked at the floor for a second, and said, I think she's used to being in charge. Both of us were wrong in a way that only gets clear after years of it. The first fork in the road showed up with a seating chart. I was 29, teaching elementary music, living on coffee and district budgets and the kind of optimism people only had before marriage becomes paperwork, groceries, and deciding whose family gets Thanksgiving. Nathan was 31, a software engineer with a quiet voice and a mind that organized itself in neat rows. He was not flashy. He was not a big talker. He listened all the way through before he answered. That felt like peace to me, because I had grown up with my mother filling every room first. Our wedding was supposed to be small. One church, one reception hall, one full Saturday. I wanted candlelight, cheap wine, and a string quartet from the high school if I could talk them into it. My mother wanted command the first time she took the vendor binder out of my hands. She smiled while doing it. You've got enough on your plate, she said, flipping through florist options at my kitchen table. I'm just looking out for my daughter. It sounded loving if you didn't know the tone. Her bracelets clicked against the paper. She had that principal posture even sitting down, shoulders square, chin lifted a fraction too high. Nathan sat across from me with a legal pad and our budget. He looked at me like, do you want me to say something? I gave him the smallest shake of my head. That was one of the off-ramps. Not the biggest one, just the first clear one. My mother could have asked what flowers I wanted and let the answers stand. She could have paid for the extra chairs she insisted on and left it there. She could have sat in a pew and cried into a tissue like normal mothers in late October. Instead, she rewrote the guest list, called my florist directly, and told the caterer we were adding to vegetarian plates. Because Megan forgets these things under pressure. I didn't forget. She never asked. When I told her I wanted the quartet near the back of the sanctuary, she smiled that thin, dry little smile and said, Sweetheart, acoustics are not your strength. Nathan drove home from one planning meeting with his hands locked on the steering wheel and said, Your mother talks to you like you're 14. I looked out the passenger window at the orange wash of Minneapolis street lights and said the sentence I used for years. That's just how she is. What I meant was this. If I named it, I had to do something about it. So I didn't. The wedding came and went. It was beautiful because weddings often are, even when one person keeps trying to stand in the middle of them. My mother wore navy silk and cried in the front pew and told everyone in the receiving line. We worked so hard on this. Nathan heard it. I heard it. We both let it go because people are trained to forgive mothers in public. That was the second fork. Marriage did not make my mother back up. It made her bolder. She had spent 30 years building an identity round authorities. Bells rang when she moved through hallways. Adults called her Dr. Kessler, even though her doctorate sat framed in the den. Like a crown she never took off. Retirement took away her campus, her office, and the daily stream of people looking to her for decisions. I became the new building she ran when Nathan and I started house hunting. She came to 2 showings just to give an experienced eye. At the first one, she stood in a split-level living room that smelled faintly of dogs and fresh paint, folded her arms, and said, No, the traffic pattern in this house is ridiculous. Nathan's real top blinked. I remember the light from the bay window stripping across the beige carpet. I remember the taste of stale mint from the gum I'd been chewing. I remember the way my mother's perfume sat too heavy in the empty room. Nathan said, very calmly, "We're the ones buying it." My mother turned to him and smiled like a teacher about to correct a child in front of class. And I'm the one making sure my daughter doesn't overpay for bad bones. We didn't buy that house. Not because of her. That is what I told myself then. The inspection had been rough. The kitchen needed work. The roof was older than the listing said. We had reasons. But I still remember how warm my face felt on the drive home, and how Nathan kept the radio off. By the third house, my mother had started talking directly to the realtor as if Nathan and I were two students. She was supervising on a field trip. By the fourth, she was texting me listings at 6:12 a.m. By the fifth, she had a color-coded spreadsheet. Then she offered us money for the down payment. Not because you can't do it yourselves, she said over coffee at her house, stirring cream into her mug. I just don't want you stretched too thin. Everything I've done was for this family. People hear that kind of offer and think generosity. I did too. Nathan heard strings. He waited until we were in the car, then rested both hands on the wheel and stared through the windshield a second too long. If we take that money, she's going to treat this house like an annex. I laughed because that was easier than letting his words sink into my ribs. You're being dramatic. He looked at me then, not irritated, not wounded, just very still. Megan, my mouth went dry. I knew he was right. We took the money anyway. That was another fork. A bigger one. We told ourselves we'd pay her back fast. We told ourselves it was temporary. We told ourselves grown adults can accept help without accepting ownership. 3 weeks after closing, my mother asked for a spare key. Emergency use only, she said. Nathan said, we can leave one in a lockbox. My mother smiled at him over the island in our new kitchen. The kitchen still smelled like caulk and cardboard because we'd only moved in 5 days earlier. There were boxes stacked against the breakfast nook. My wedding china was still wrapped in newspaper on the dining room floor. A lockbox is what people use for airbing guests, she said. I'm your mother. Nathan didn't answer right away. I should tell you something important here. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it's the last polite stop before a boundary. Nathan's silence meant he was giving me the chance to step in. I didn't. Just one key, I said. My mother reached across the counter and squeezed my wrist like I had passed a test. You'll thank me one day. She made 2 copies. I found that out 6 months later when she let herself in while I was in the shower. I came downstairs in damp hair and socks to find her at my stove stirring spaghetti sauce and criticizing the way I stacked my baking sheets. You left your garage side door unlocked, she said without turning around. Anyone could have walked in. My husband has a key, I said. So does your mother, she answered. The sauce popped red against the side of the Dutch oven. Garlic and basil filled the room. My pulse hammered in my ears. Nathan didn't know you were coming. She finally turned then, wooden spoon in hand. I don't need a written invitation to check on my daughter. That was another fork. She could have handed the extra key back when I asked. She could have said, you're right. I should have called. She could have heard the edge in my voice and treated it like a stop sign. Instead, she looked me up and down in my wet hair and said, if this is about Nathan wanting privacy, that's his issue. Families don't stand on ceremony. I let her keep the keys for another 4 years. If you've ever lived inside family control, you know how ridiculous that sentence sounds when said out loud later. At the time, it just felt like weather, irritating, constant, somehow easier to work around than to confront. Then Eli was born. That should have shifted something. Sometimes a baby makes a parent loosen their grip because the focus moves down one generation. My mother took it as a promotion. She came to the hospital in a camel coat and lipstick to red for fluorescent lighting, and immediately told the postpartum nurse I had always been overly sensitive to pain. The nurse looked at me. I looked at the ceiling. When we got home, my mother arrived with casseroles, diapers, and opinions stacked higher than both. You're holding him too much. That swaddle is sloppy. Why is the bassinet over there? Drafts travel. Nathan, you really should support her elbow when she nurses. The house smelled like lanolin, coffee, and the sour sweet milk scent that lives on everything when you have a newborn. I was bleeding, leaking, and sleeping in 40-minute scraps. Nathan walked around like a man diffusing bombs with oven mitts on. One afternoon, I came out of the nursery and found my mother rearranging the kitchen drawers because function matters more than aesthetics. Nathan stood by the sink with Eli against his chest, jaw tight enough to show at the hinge. Sharon, he said, please stop changing things in our house. She turned slowly, dishing towels in hand. I'm just trying to help. We didn't ask for that. There it was. Another fork. A clean one. She could have said, you're right. She could have picked up her purse, kissed my forehead, and gone home for the day. She could have let the new parents be new parents. Instead, she looked at me, not him. Is this what you want? She asked. For your husband to speak to your mother this way. My throat closed. I should have said yes. I should have said he is speaking to you like a man asking for basic respect inside his own home. What I said was, Mom, let's not do this right now. That tiny sentence cost us years. Because people like my mother hear soft redirection as weakness. They hear not right now and think, good, there's still room. So she took more room. She started dropping by on weeknights without asking. She would stand in the mudroom with a Tupperware dish and say, I was in the neighborhood. Even when she lived 23 minutes away, she texted me every morning. What are you wearing to parent-teacher night? Did you call the pediatrician about that cough? You need to tell Nathan to refinance before rates climb again. Your lawn looks patchy on the left. Once, when I didn't answer for 4 hours because I was teaching recorders to 22 third graders and then supervising bus duty, she sent, are you alive? Then, I guess mothers don't matter once daughters get married. Then, fine, ignore me. Nathan saw those messages because my phone lit up across the dinner table. While Eli smeared applesauce into his hair, he picked up my phone, read them, and set it back down very carefully. That isn't normal. I was standing at the sink scraping chicken into the trash. The smell of lemon dish soap hit the back of my throat. My shoulders crept up towards my ears. Can we not do this tonight? I said. He didn't raise his voice. Nathan almost never did. He just looked at me with that quiet, unbearable accuracy. Then, I had no answer. The first person outside my house who said it out loud was my friend Lisa. Lisa and I taught in the same district. She taught 4th grade. She was one of those women who brought actual cut-up fruit to lunch in glass containers and somehow still knew everybody's divorce status before the principal did. Not in a vicious way, in an observant way. She came to our house one Friday night for wine and takeout after my mother had stopped by for 10 minutes and stayed an hour and 15. During that hour, my mother had corrected the way I pronounced a composer's name in front of Lisa, moved a lamp 6 inches to the left because the room breathes better this way, and told Nathan he should really think twice about letting Eli start hockey because you don't have the building for sports injuries in your family. After she left, Lisa waited until I was carrying plates into the kitchen. The dishwasher door was open. The room smelled like soy sauce and ginger, and the last of my mother's perfume, still hanging in the air. Lisa took the plate from my hand and said, quietly, Meg, your mom doesn't talk to you like an adult. Something in my stomach dropped. I laughed. Then, wrong. She's intense. No, Lisa leaned one hip against the counter. Intense is a person who alphabetizes spices. Your mom corrects you like you're one missed homework assignment away from detention. The kitchen went very still around me. I could hear Nathan and Eli in the living room building something with magnetic tiles, soft plastic clicks, cartoon theme music from the TV. Lisa lowered her voice more. The way she speaks to you isn't normal. Air left my lungs. I stared at the dish towels in my hands because looking at Lisa, meant admitting she wasn't saying anything I hadn't felt for years. I don't even know what I'd call it, I whispered. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in the blue light of my phone and started searching phrases I had never once connected to my own life. Controlling parent, adult daughter, emotional abuse, no hitting, mother guilt, manipulation, marital, gay. Kept seeing the same words. Coercive control. At first, I almost backed out because it sounded too extreme. In my head, abuse meant bruises, broken plates, holes in drywalls, somebody grabbing your wrist hard enough to leave a mark. My mother did none of that. She did not scream like a TV monster. She did not slap me. She did not throw things. She monitored. She undermined. She humiliated. She used money, guilt, obligations, and the threat of withdrawal like tools hanging on a wall. The legal language around that was changing in some places. Not everywhere. Not cleanly, but enough that I stayed up reading. Some states had started naming coercive control more directly in domestic violence laws. Others had begun folding economic control, intimidation, and repeated non-physical abuse into broader protection frameworks. The details varied by state. The point didn't. You did not need a bruise before a home could turn into a cage. I wish I could tell you that was my awakening. It wasn't. Knowledge and action are cousins, not twins. The next morning, I still answered my mother's call. The years between that and the breaking points blur in places, but certain scenes stay bright. The day she told Eli at age 4, Grandma's house has real vegetables, not your mother's little snack dinner, while he sat kicking his legs under her breakfast table. This Sunday, she showed up at church and told 3 women from Bible study within my hearing, Megan's just not naturally organized. Some daughters need more guidance than others. The Christmas, she handed Nathan a toolkit in front of my whole extended family and said, maybe now you can finally fix the cabinet door you've been ignoring. He said thank you. His smile never reached his eyes, and every time there was a chance to pull back. My mother chose the opposite. If I said we couldn't come for Sunday dinner because Eli had a fever, she'd say, of course. Children get sick when routines are unstable. If Nathan said we'd already made plans, she'd text me separately, not him. You don't have to let him isolate you from family. If I pushed back, even softly, she switched to sacrifice. After everything I've done for you, everything I've done was for this family. One spring, when Eli was 5, his kindergarten teacher asked if she could speak to me after dismissal. The classroom smelled like crayons, dry erased markers, and wet boots lined up under cubbies. Eli was at the reading rug putting dinosaur stickers on his shirt. Mrs. Bell closed the door halfway and crouched near a tiny table painted with chipped primary colors. I wanted to ask if there's been any tension at home, she said. My hands went cold around the straps of my purse. Why? She kept her voice soft. Ellie's been saying things during transitions. Stuff like, don't make Grandma mad. On if we don't do it right, Grandma won't want to come over. The room tilted for a second. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a child laughed too hard at something and got shushed. Mrs. Bell watched my face carefully. I'm not accusing anyone. I just wanted to check in because the way he says it, it sounds like he carries a lot in his little body. A lot in his little body. I nodded like I understood the sentence and also like it wasn't cutting through me on the way down. That was the first time my mother's behavior moved out of the lane of hard on me and into settling inside my child. I drove home with my jaw locked and my palms slick on the steering wheel. Nathan was in the driveway when I got there, laptop bag over one shoulder. Ellie's booster seat still buckled in the back of his car from pickup rotation. He took one look at my face and said, what happened? I told him in the garage before the inside door was even shut. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back against the shelves of holiday bins and lawn fertilizers and closed his eyes for one beat. Then he said, very quietly, this has to stop. The thing about Nathan was that he never wasted language. So when he used that sentence, Plain and short. It hit like steel. I nodded. Then my phone buzzed out, Mom. The screen glowed in my hand like a dare. Nathan looked at it, then at me. I answered. My mother's voice came in brisk and cheerful. Just checking. You still bringing the pecan pie tomorrow? Or should I assume I'll have to make that too? Thanksgiving. Of course it was Thanksgiving. The holiday that turns every family tension into stage lighting. I remember every sensory detail of that day because my body stored it like evidence. The Kessler house smelled like butter, sage, onions, and turkey roasting since dawn. Frost clung white to the edges of the front shrubs. Inside, the windows over the sink fogged from steam. Football droned from the den. My aunts talked loud over the sound of dishes, somebody's. Perfume mixed with nutmeg and gravy in a way that made the air feel thick. My mother wore a cream sweater and a flourished smudged Thanksgiving apron. She'd had since I was a teenager. Little stitched pumpkins across the pocket. The hem dusted with white from her hands. She stood at the kitchen island carving orders into the room with a chef's knife and the same principal energy she used to bring to assembly day. I was carrying the cranberry sauce from the mudroom fridge when she looked at the bowl and clicked her tongue. You can't even get the cranberry sauce right. Can you? The words landed in front of my Aunt Donna, my cousin Marcy, Nathan, and to church friends my mother had invited because holidays are for community. One of them was Lisa. My fingers tightened around the glass bowl so hard the cold bit into my palm. It's homemade, I said. My mother wiped her hands on that flourished dusted apron and looked down into the bowl. Like a judge reviewing a failed project. It's loose. It should set more. Honestly, Megan, you rush everything. Nathan was at the far end of the counter opening sparkling cider for Eli and my cousin's kids. He didn't look up right away. That was his tell. When he got to still, it meant he was trying not to make the room worse before deciding whether the room deserved savings. My mother set the knife down. Let me fix it. Mom, it's fine. She raised one eyebrow. Excuse me? There it was, the fork, big and bright, and sitting right in the middle of the kitchen floor. She could have laughed it off. She could have said, fine, put it on the table. She could have let a bowl of cranberries be a bowl of cranberries. Instead, she stepped closer. After everything I've sacrificed, she said, each word landing heavier than the one before it. You want to get snippy with me over sauce in my own kitchen? My chest went tight. The room around me blurred at the edges. I could hear the low hiss of the roasting pans and the soft squeaks of Ellie's sneakers on the hardwood as he chased his cousin through the hall. Mom, you need to stop. It was the first clean sentence I'd given her in years. She stared at me. Her mouth flattened. One hand stayed pressed against the apron pocket, dusted with flour. The other rested on the island near the knife she had just set down. Stop what? She asked, talking to me like that. My aunt stopped moving. Lisa, by the sink, froze with a wine glass halfway to the counter. My mother folded both arms over her chest. You've turned fragile. Megan, I don't know when that happened. Nathan looked up then. I saw his hand dip once toward his jeans pocket dot at the time. I thought he was checking a text. I learned later he had already started the recording. You embarrass me in front of people, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. My mother let out one short laugh through her nose. Oh, please. If anybody's embarrassed, it's me. You show up late. The sauce isn't right. Ellie's shoes don't match his outfit, and Nathan stands there like furniture while you spiral. The kitchen air changed. Not because she raised her voice. She didn't. Because she crossed a line in front of witnesses and liked the feelings of it. Nathan set the cider down. Sharon, he said, quiet as ever, that's enough. She turned to him so slowly it made my skin prickle. And the look she gave him was the look principals giving boys in the hallway. Right before calling their parents. This is between my daughter and me. He didn't move. No, he said. It stopped being that a long time ago. Lisa's eyes flicked from him to me. My mother looked at my face then. Not Nathan's. That was always her move. Skip the person holding the line and go for the one most likely to fold. See, she said, he's the one who changed you. My pulse kicked up so hard I could feel it in my gums. Nathan did not answer. He just stood there with one hand still in his pocket, thumb against the phone screen, recording every word. I didn't know that yet. I only knew the room smelled suddenly too sharp, like scorched sugar and turkey skin and cold air leaking in each time a child opened the back door. My mother leaned in a fraction. I am your mother, she said. You do not speak to me this way in my own home. Nathan stepped between us just enough to break the line of sight. Not dramatic, not chest out, just one shift of weight. And my mother saw it. Her eyes narrowed. Then, right there with gravy simmering on the stove and football commentators shouting from the den, she smiled that tiny, brittle smile and said, interesting. She didn't explode. That would have been cleaner. She just pivoted. For the next 40 minutes, she moved through dinner with surgical politeness, slicing turkeys, refilling water glasses, asking my aunt about her hips, praising Lisa's sweet potatoes, all while freezing me out so completely I could feel the cold in my teeth. When I passed the rolls, she took the basket without looking at me. When Eli asked if Grandma wanted to hear his Thanksgiving song from school, she said, in a minute. Sweetheart, adults are talking. When Nathan asked where she wanted the pie server, she answered my cousin instead. People call that civility. People who grow up with it know it is punishment. At dessert, Lisa caught my eye once across the table. She didn't make a face, didn't do anything dramatic. She just gave me one look that said, I heard it, all of it. On the drive home, Eli fell asleep with pie crust on his sweater. The car heater blew to warm against my shins. Street lights slid over the windshield in amber bands. Nathan kept both hands on the wheel. For 10 full minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I recorded her. I turned so fast my seatbelt locked against my chest. What? He glanced at me once, then back to the road. Not just today. My mouth went dry. The tires hummed over dark pavement. Eli snored softly in the back seat. How long? I asked. Nathan swallowed. The dashboard light cut a pale line across his cheek. A while, my stomach twisted into a fist. You recorded my mom without telling me? I started because every time it happened, you came away thinking maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt in the moment. He kept his eyes on the road. I needed something you couldn't talk yourself out of. I pressed my fingers into my own palm until the nails bit. What else have you recorded? He did not answer right away, just drove. Then, very quietly, he said, enough. He didn't give it to me that night. He didn't force me to listen in the car with Eli in the back and the smell of apple pie and cold leather sitting between us. He waited. 3 days later, after Mrs. Bell emailed again to say Eli had drawn a picture of our family with Grandma standing. Between me and him, Nathan came upstairs carrying a thick file folder. The bedroom lamp was on. November wind pressed dry branches against the window screen with a soft scratching sound. My work bag sat open on the bench, half unpacked. I was still in my school clothes, cardigans smelling faintly of copier toner and cafeteria pizza. Nathan set the folder on the bed between us. It was overstuffed. White papers, screenshots, tab dividers, a legal pad folded in half. The top page showed one of my mother's texts, enlarged and printed. Call me now. I should not have to chase my own daughter without my throat closed. What is this? I asked, even though I already knew. Nathan sat on the edge of the dresser, forearms on his knees. 3 years, he said. I stared at the folder. The room felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls had shifted inward while I was teaching second graders to clap quarter notes. I wasn't trying to build a case against your mother, he said. I was trying to show you the pattern. My fingers hovered over the folder, but didn't land. The paper had that dry, sharp printer smell. I could see colored tabs along the sides. Dates, holidays, school events, Sunday dinners, missed calls, recordings. Why now? My voice came out rough. Nathan looked at the closed bedroom door, then back at me. Because Eli is starting to carry it. Because your friend heard it. Because your son's teacher sees it. Because at some point not naming it becomes choosing it. The air left my lungs. I sat down on the edge of the bed, close enough that the mattress dipped under the weight of the folder. Then I opened it. The first page was Thanksgiving. The second was Mother's Day. The third was a transcript of a voicemail my mother had left after I skipped one Sunday dinner because Nathan had a migraine and Eli had a fever. By the fourth page, my vision blurred. By the fifth, I shut the folder with both hands and pressed my palms flat against the cover, like I could keep all 12 years from spilling any farther into the room. Nathan did not touch me. He just sat there, quiet and steady, while I kept my eyes closed and tried to breathe. Then he said, "There's more you need to hear." Then he said, "There's more you need to hear." He reached into the folder and pulled out a pair of cheap wired earbuds wrapped around his phone. Not AirPods, not anything sleek. Just the kind with a little white cord that tangles in a pocket and gets the job done. He held them out. I stared at them like they were something sharp, Nathan. His voice stayed low. If I played it out loud, Eli might hear. The house around us was quiet except for the dishwasher downstairs and the soft, uneven drag of branches against the bedroom window. I could smell my own school clothes, chalk dust and stale coffee, and the faint sweetness of the lotion I put on after washing my hands too many times in one day. I took the earbuds. The cord felt cold in my palm. Nathan unlocked his phone, tapped once, then handed it over. The screen showed a list of audio files, dates, holidays, ordinary names for ugly moments. Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, drop-in after bath, voicemail 6:12 a.m. He had labeled them like a man trying not to drown in chaos. I put one earbud in, then the other. My fingers were shaking badly enough that I had to try twice. Nathan tapped Thanksgiving. First I heard silverware, then football in the background, muffled from the den, then my own voice, thinner than I remembered. "Mom, it's fine." And then hers, clear, controlled, flour on the apron, knife on the cutting board. Every word exactly where she wanted it. You can't even get the cranberry sauce right. Can you? My chest went tight so fast, I forgot to breathe. Hearing cruelty in the moment hurts one way. Hearing it later, clean and isolated from the fog of the room, hurts in a colder place. There was no smell of turkey to confuse it. No cousins moving through the hall. No instinct to smooth things over because guests were present. Just her voice. Just mine. Just the shape of the power between them. The recording moved on. My mother saying I rushed everything. Nathan's voice. "Quiet, Sharon. That's enough." My mother again. "This is between my daughter and me." Then the line that had sat in my chest like a splinter ever since. "He's the one who changed you." I ripped one earbud out. Air hit my skin cold. My vision blurred so hard the room seemed to tilt sideways for a second. I bent forward and pressed my hand over my mouth. Nathan did not say, "See?" He did not say, "I told you." He just sat there and let me have the full weight of what my own ears had finally taken away from my own excuses. After a minute, maybe two, I put the earbuds back in. "Play the next one," I whispered. He tapped Mother's Day. That one was a voicemail. My mother sounding wounded and lofty all at once because Nathan and I had taken Eli to Como Zoo instead of driving to her brunch reservation. "I just think it's interesting," she said on the recording, "that I gave up 30 years of my life for this family. And now I find out about Mother's Day from Facebook pictures." Then the pause she always used before the knife. "I hope Nathan is worth the distance." I swallowed so hard my throat hurt. Next came another voicemail. Not dramatic. That was the problem. She rarely sounded dramatic. She sounded reasonable enough that if you only heard one clip, you might think I was overreacting. "Megan, call me back. It is deeply concerning that Eli is being kept from his grandmother because your husband doesn't. Like being challenged." Then another. Fine, ignore me. But if something happens and I'm the last to know, remember this was your choice. Then a transcript from a text chain where she had sent me 14 messages in 2 hours because I missed one call during parent-teacher conferences. Then an incident log Nathan had written after the kitchen key scene years earlier. He hadn't editorialized. That was somehow worse. He wrote like a witness. 6:42 p.m., entered via side door without prior notice. Megan visibly startled coming downstairs. Sharon stated, I don't need a written invitation to check on my daughter. Refused key returned when asked indirectly. No adjectives. No opinion. Just fact after fact until my whole childhood and adult life started ranging themselves into a pattern I could no longer pretend was weather. I reached the last page I could stand and shut the folder again. My hand stayed on the cover. Warm from my skin now. I feel stupid, I said. Nathan's face changed then, finally. Not much. Just enough for me to see the hurt hit him on the way through. No, how did I not see it? You saw it, he said. You just couldn't call it by its real name yet. That sentence landed so softly, it almost hurt more. I looked down at the folder. You should have told me sooner. He nodded once. Probably. There was no defense in it. No self-congratulations. No hidden scorekeeping. Just a plain answer from a man who had spent years choosing the least explosive route and had run out of road. I thought if I pushed too hard, he said, you'd feel like you had to choose. My throat closed up again. And now? He looked at the bedroom door, then back at me. Now you do. I slept maybe 90 minutes that night. The rest of the time I laid on top of the covers with the folder beside me and watched my whole adult life split into scenes, wedding binders, house keys, postpartum drawers, text chains, church comments. Ellie's teacher using the words a lot in his little body. At 3:17 a.m., I picked up my phone and searched again. Coercive control, adult child, parent emotional abuse, no physical violence, family. Protective order, non-physical harassment, family member this time. I wasn't looking for language in the abstract. I was looking for exits. The articles were uneven. Some were academic. Some were advocacy sites. Some were survivor stories that made my pulse kick harder the longer I read. The legal part was messy because law is always messier than pain. Some states had started naming coercive control more clearly in domestic abuse conversations. California had moved further than a lot of places. Connecticut and Hawaii had made progress too. Other places folded the same behavior into broader categories like harassment, intimidation, stalking, or emotional abuse, depending on the facts. The details varied by state. The core truth didn't. Repeated humiliation, isolation, monitoring, financial strings, threats of withdrawal, using children as emotional leverage, and constant undermining were not just strong personality traits. They could be abused. And another thing hit me as I kept reading. Restraining orders or protective orders are not always limited to visible physical assault. In a lot of places, repeated harassment, stalking, intimidation, threatening behavior, and coercive conduct can matter too. The exact threshold depends on where you are and what you can prove. But the law was a lot less narrow than I had been taught to believe. I wasn't ready to file for anything at 3:17 in the morning. But for the first time in my life, I understood that she never hit me was not the same thing as this is fine. The next afternoon, during my lunch break in the choir room, I called a therapist Lisa had once mentioned after her sister's divorce. Her name was Dr. Erin Feldman, family systems, trauma-informed. Office in St. Louis Park with neutral walls and, as I learned later, a bowl of mints nobody ever touched. I got an intake 2 days later. Her office smelled like tea and wool and the dry paper scent of old books. A white noise machine hummed by the door. Outside the window, November had turned everything the color of dishwater. Inside, the lighting was soft enough that my shoulders dropped a fraction before I even sat down. I told her about my mother in fragments at first. The wedding, the key, the drop-ins, the texts. Thanksgiving. Ellie's teacher. Halfway through. My voice shrank and my fingers started knotting around a tissue I hadn't even realized I'd picked up. Dr. Feldman didn't interrupt. She didn't rush to label it. She just listened until I ran out of tidy language and started saying ugly, honest things like, I don't know if I even have a personality when she's in the room. That made my own lungs seize for a second after I said it. Dr. Feldman folded one ankle over the other and said, Control doesn't stop being controlled because the person doing it calls it love. Something warm and painful moved behind my ribs. I looked at the carpet because eye contact felt too sharp. She's my mother. I know. And she really does think she's helping. Dr. Feldman nodded. A lot of controlling people do. Intent and impact are not the same thing. I laughed once. It came out brittle. That feels too simple. It isn't simple. It's just clear. I told her what I'd read the night before about coercive control and broader domestic abuse definitions and how my brain kept resisting because there was no hitting. She leaned forward slightly. Non-physical abuse can still train a body to live in fear, guilt, and constant self-editing. She said, and when a child starts carrying the same tension, that's not a personality conflict anymore. That's a family system doing damage. I sat with that. Then she gave me something that turned out to matter more than any single insight. A boundary is not a speech, she said. It's a condition with a consequence. The room went very still around that sentence. I felt it land. Not a speech. Not another carefully phrased plea my mother could turn into disrespect or ingratitude. A condition. With a consequence. At the end of the session, I asked the question that had been scratching at me since the night before. What if she gets worse when I set one? Dr. Feldman didn't sugarcoat it. She probably will. Control tends to escalate when it starts losing grip. If she begins showing up, harassing you, contacting your workplace or your son's school, or making you feel physically unsafe, talk to a local attorney or advocate quickly, depending on the facts and the state. Legal protection can exist before physical violence. I drove home with my hands cold on the steering wheel and those words moving around inside me, like a key turning in a lock. Control tends to escalate when it starts losing grip. I sent my mother an email that night because email gives people fewer places to pretend they didn't understand. Nathan sat beside me on the couch while I wrote it. Eli was asleep. The house smelled faintly of toothpaste and the lavender detergent from his pajamas. I kept it short. No more unannounced visits. No direct contact with Ellie's school or teachers. No criticism of my parenting, marriage, home, or body in front of my child or anyone else. No using money, gifts, or guilt as leverage. If she wanted a relationship with us, she needed to respect those boundaries and attend family counseling with me. If she couldn't do that, we would step back from contact. I read it aloud once. My mouth went dry halfway through. Nathan said, send it exactly like that. So I did. My mother replied 14 minutes later. The subject line stayed the same. The body was for paragraphs of polished outrage. I have no idea what kind of fantasy narrative Nathan has built around me. I will not be spoken to like an intruder by my own children. This sounds like emotional abuse by a controlling husband, and I am deeply concerned for you. You may regret letting him isolate you from family. Darvo, I didn't know the acronym the first time I read it. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Later, when I learned it, I almost laughed from how perfectly it fits. At the time, all I knew was that my mother had been offered a clean chance to hear me and had turned it into a case against Nathan before the hour was out. That was another fork, a big one. She could have asked to talk. She could have said, I didn't realize it felt this bad. She could have apologized even badly. She could have chosen confusion over combat. She chose pride. 2 days later, Ellie's teacher emailed me again. Subject line, quick question. The email itself was careful. Hi, Megan. Just wanted to let you know Sharon stopped by the front office around lunch asking if Eli could have a special early pickup with Grandma. We did not release him, of course, since she isn't on his approved list. Eli got upset when he saw her in the office window. Wanted to give you a heads up in case he seems extra sensitive tonight. The words blurred the first time I read them. Then they sharpened all at once. My mother had gone to my son's school after I told her not to. After she had my boundaries in writing. After Dr. Feldman had said control tends to escalate when it starts losing grip. When Nathan came home, I handed him my phone without a word. He read the email. His jaw locked once. Then he set the phone down and said, "We're done." Not angry, not loud, just final. I called Dr. Feldman first, then Claudia. No, not Claudia. Different wars. This time I called a local family law attorney who handled harassment and protective orders because I needed information, not drama. Her name was Tessa Moran. She met me by video the next morning because I couldn't leave school during testing week. She asked practical questions, dates, school visit, unwanted home entries, written boundaries, recordings, child impact, whether I feared physical violence, whether my mother had ever threatened self-harm or retaliation, whether she had keys. When I said yes to the keys, she made me stop and repeat it. Okay, she said. First, change the locks. Nathan was doing that before the call ended. Then she gave me the legal version of what Dr. Feldman had said. People hear restraining orders and think punches. In many places, it can be broader than that. The exact standard depends on jurisdiction and relationships, but harassment, stalking, repeated unwanted contact, intimidation, and coercive behavior can matter. Documentation matters more than emotion. Right now you have documentation. My mouth went dry. Do I have enough? You may have enough if it continues. You may already have enough for certain forms of relief. But court is one tool. Sometimes a formal stop and desist and strict no contact boundary is enough. Sometimes it isn't. She paused. If she shows up again at your home, school, workplace, or your child's school after clear notice, call. Do not debate with her on the porch. That sentence stayed with me. Do not debate with her on the porch. 3 days later, I asked my mother to meet. Not because I owed her one more chance. Not really. If I'm honest, I did it because some stubborn, grieving part of me needed to see whether there was any version of her that would choose me over being right. We met at her house on a Sunday afternoon. The same house where she had graded papers at the dining room table for years. The same house where every Christmas smelled like clove oranges and floor polish. The same front porch where she'd waved to me after college breaks and called, "Drive safe, honey." Nathan came with me. Eli stayed with Lisa. We drove in silence through neighborhood streets lined with bare trees and dirty snow piled in soft gray ridges at the curb. The sky sat low and white. The way Minnesota winter likes to erase the edges of things before it really begins. I carried the file folder on my lap the whole drive. It felt heavier than paper should. My mother opened the door before we knocked. She wore a dark green sweater, no apron this time. But I still saw the flower on the Thanksgiving one in my head before she even spoke. Her eyes flicked to the folder, then to Nathan, then back to me. Are we seriously doing this with him here? I heard Tessa in my head. Do not debating with her on the porch. Can we come in? I asked. She stepped back, barely. The house smelled like lemon oil and coffee. The same grandfather clock ticked in the front hall. Family photos still lined the stair wall. Me in braces, me in choir black, me in caps and gowns. Me at the wedding smiling beside the woman who now looked at me like I was staging a coup in her living room. We sat in the den. My mother took her usual armchair. Nathan sat at the far end of the sofa, silent, hands folded. I sat on the edge of the cushion nearest the coffee table with the folder in my lap. The lamp beside the chair cast a warm yellow pool over everything, which somehow made the room feel more brutal. I started. You went to Ellie's school. Her chin lifted. I was trying to see my grandson. After I told you not to contact the school. You don't get to cut me out of my family's life because your husband has issues. Nathan didn't react. Not visibly. He just looked at her. Steady. Quiet. The kind of silence that made people feel it if they couldn't stand themselves in it. My mother noticed. She always noticed. She turned to me. You've turned my own daughter against me. There was the line. I set the folder on the coffee table and opened it. My fingers were cold, but they were steady now. You've had years of chances to stop, I said. When you rewrote my wedding. When you kept a key after I asked for privacy. When you came into my house uninvited after I had a newborn. When you insulted me in front of my son. When you told church friends I couldn't manage my own life. When Ellie's teacher had to ask if things were tense at home because he was scared of making you mad. When I emailed you boundaries. When you went to his school anyway. As I spoke, I slid pages out. Texts, dates, transcript excerpts, the teacher email, my boundary email, her reply. My mother crossed her arms. That folder is disgusting. I looked at her. No, this is reality. Her lips pressed into a white line. Nathan reached into his jacket pocket and put his phone on the coffee table between us. No speech, no flourishing. Just one tap. The Thanksgiving recording started. The room filled with clinking silverware and my mother's own voice saying, You can't even get the cranberry sauce right. Can you? My mother's face changed in tiny increments. First the nostrils, then the mouth, then the eyes, which moved from Nathan's face to mine and stayed there. Nathan let the clip run until he's the one who changed you. Then he stopped it. The silence afterwards was so complete I could hear the clock in the hall through 2 rooms. My mother drew in one slow breath through her nose. Then she leaned back in the chair and said, You've weaponized a family dinner. I actually felt something inside me go in still at that. No spikes of fresh pain, no urge to explain, just stillness. Because there it was again. Another clean fork. She could have hurt herself. She could have said, I didn't know I sounded like that. She could have looked at the folder and the phone and her own daughter sitting across from her with shaking hands and finally asked, What do you need from me? Instead, she said weaponized. I heard Dr. Feldman in my head. A boundary is not a speech. It's a condition with a consequence. So I gave her the condition. If you want any relationship with me or Eli going forward, this is what happens. You return every key. You do not come to our house unless invited. You do not contact Ellie's school. You do not discuss my marriage with other people. You do not criticize me in front of my children. And you attend counseling with me. My mother's eyes widened. Just a fraction. You are giving me terms. Yes. Her voice sharpened. Like I'm some criminal? I kept my hands flat on the folder because I knew if I clasped them, she'd see them shake. No? Like you're a person who has hurt me for years and been asked to stop. She stood up so fast the armchair cushion hissed under the sudden release. Everything I've done was for this family. Her voice bounced off the framed diploma on the wall and the old piano by the window. You think any mother wants to spend her retirement cleaning up after her daughter's bad decisions? She said, You think I enjoy stepping in every time you let things slide? I protected you. I protected your son. I protected this family when your husband was too passive to lead it. Nathan didn't answer. He just looked at her. That silence worked on people like a mirror. My mother pointed at him with a shaking finger. He's the one who changed you. Then the tears came. Fast, hard, real enough to wet her face. And still somehow arranged around herself. I'm losing my baby, she said. Do you understand that? I am losing my baby because of him. The old version of me would have crossed the room right then, would have knelt by the chair, would have handed her tissues, would have said, Mom, no, that's not what this is. The old version of me would have managed her feelings right over the top of my own. I stayed on the sofa. My chest hurt. My throat ached. My eyes burned. But I stayed there. I am not your baby. I said, I am your daughter. I'm 41 years old. I have a husband and a son and a home. And every time you were given a chance to respect that, you chose control instead. She stared at me through tears. I reached into the folder and pulled out one final sheet. A simple list. Keys to return. No contact conditions. School restrictions. Counseling options. Consequences if violated. I set it on the table. If this continues, I said, and my voice shook now, but didn't break. We will protect our home and our children however we need to. That includes legal options if your behavior keeps escalating. Her face changed at the phrase legal options, not fear, offense, pure offense. Like I had spit on the family name. You would threaten your own mother with a restraining order, she whispered. I thought of the unlocked garage door, the front office at Ellie's school, the texts, the voicemails, the boom-smudged apron. 12 years of it. I'm telling you the consequences. That was the last fork, the last clean one. She could have sat back down. She could have returned the keys. She could have wept and said yes to counseling. She could have chosen relationship over pride. Instead, she grabbed the sheet off the table, crumpled it in one fist, and said, "If you walk out that door over this man's paranoia, don't expect me to beg." The room went silent again. Nathan's did not. So did I. No screaming, no grand speech, no movie moment. Just the terrible quiet of a choice finally made. I picked up the folder. Nathan picked up his phone. My mother was still standing by the armchair. One hand clenched around the ruined boundary sheet, tears on her face, and fury under all of it. I looked at her for one long second. Then I said, "We're done." We walked out. The hallway smelled like lemon oil and winter air leaking under the front door. My boots thudded softly over the runner by the stairs. Nathan opened the door. Cold hit my face hard enough to sting. Behind us, my mother called my name once. Not Megan the way people greet you. Megan the way a principal calls you back before detention. I kept walking. When we reached the car, Nathan opened my door first. I got in. He circled to the driver's side. Through the windshield, I could see my mother on the porch. One hand gripped the doorframe so hard the knuckles flashed white against the dark wood. Her mouth opened once, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Nathan backed down the driveway slowly because there was a patch of old ice near the curb. I didn't turn around after the first few feet. I couldn't. I sat in the passenger seat with both hands in my lap and felt something inside me tearing and loosening at the same time. No contact sounds clean when people say it online. In real life, it is grief with admin. You change locks. You update school pickup lists. You tell the church nursery coordinator that no, your mother is not authorized. And yes, you need that in writing. You block numbers. Then stare at the blocked call log for a week like a person checking a wound under a bandage. You explain to your child, in simple language, that grandma is in a long time out because she kept making choices that were not safe or kind. You wake up 3 Sundays in a row feeling like you're about to miss a funeral. Then little things change. Eli stopped asking if grandma would be mad when we changed plans. Mrs. Bell emailed a month later to say he seemed lighter during transitions. Nathan laughed more in the kitchen. I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed. Sharon did not go quietly. She left voicemails from unknown numbers for a while. We saved them and didn't answer. She sent a church friend to check in, and Lisa shut that down before the woman made it past hello. At one point, she mailed a birthday card to Eli with $20 tucked inside and a note that read, "Grandma always loves you more than rules do." Tessa sent the formal warning letter after that. The card stopped. The church piece unraveled slower. My mother had spent decades building a local reputation as a good educator, a generous volunteer, a devoted mother. Those things do not vanish because one daughter goes quiet. But stories lose polish when enough people hear the seams. Lisa had been at Thanksgiving. My Aunt Donna had to dot Mrs. Bell wasn't interested in gossip, but schools document things. The woman from church who tried to check in got more truth than she expected. My mother never got dragged in some dramatic public takedown. Real communities don't work that way. It was subtler, less deference in fellowship hall, fewer invitations, longer pauses when she walked up to a group of women already talking. A while later, one of the church ladies I barely knew saw me in Target and squeezed my arm and said, "I hope your home feels peaceful now." That was all she said. It was enough. These days, my mother lives alone. Last I heard, she still goes to the same church, same pew row most weeks. Maybe one friend sits beside her if the weather's bad. Maybe not. I don't ask for updates. But small towns and suburbs leak information through the walls whether you want them to or not. Her calls still hit my blocked log, sometimes from numbers I don't recognize. I don't listen. Eli is bigger now, old enough to tie his own skates and ask harder questions. When he asks about grandma, I tell him the truth in pieces he can carry. Sometimes loving somebody means not letting them keep hurting you. He nods like a child who has already learned more than he should have needed to. As for Nathan, he never once said, "I was right." He changed the locks, printed the records, sat beside me in silence when the guilt came in waves. He chose steadiness over performance every single time. My mother had those same forks in front of her 4 years. So did I. Same family, different choices. One of us chose control every time. The other one chose a home her son could breathe in.